In this tip, I'd like to talk about the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual relationships with regard to the construct of a human being and how that may relate to what you see in the gym. In this particular tip, we will start with the spiritual component because the spiritual component is the most influential over the body, and it is actually a higher force of influence than the mental, the emotional, or the physical. So let's look at that and why that is the case. Well, each of us has a physical body. But for example, try this. Snap your fingers with me. You snapping your fingers? Good. Now I've got a question for you. How hard do you have to snap your fingers to know that you're doing it? How lightly can you do that? Can you actually feel your own energy field? Can you move your fingers and feel the changes of the energy inside of your body? If you can do that, I've got a question for you. Who's doing that? Who is that? Who is that snapping your fingers? You see, before I made you think about it, you just thought, well, I'm just snapping my fingers. But who's giving the command? That's the spiritual part of you. This is the physical part. You see, the spiritual part, if I just touch the energy field, that part of me that's invisible, subtle, that part of my spirit, I don't need to make a snapping sound because there it is. You can feel your own energy field. How far can you go until you feel the energy emanating off your body? That's the spiritual part of you. So how might that play out in the gym? Well, many people have a spiritual practice or they're part of a religious faith. What is your idea of your highest principle? The idea that you have of your highest principle creates your spiritual model. If your spiritual model is something that you currently do not see eye to eye with, maybe you don't disagree with the spiritual practices that you were indoctrinated into as a child, or that your spouse participates in, or your lover participates in, and therefore you are feeling some form of internal pressure, be it a perceptual judgment of self or other, and that creates stress. To the degree that your spiritual philosophy is stressful to you, it is going to cause a reciprocation of that stress through the mental, which manifests in the emotional, which manifests in the physical. So for example, people that have a problem with identifying to or connecting to that which they feel created the universe oftentimes feel spiritually alone. That aloneness can lead to isolation. It can lead to fear, anxiety, and poor self-esteem. So if somebody has anxiety, fear, and poor self-esteem and they come to you for an exercise program, if you don't identify what it is that is the source of the poor self-esteem or the source of their inability to care for their own body, you must ask yourself this question: how long will they stick to their program? And what if after all this exercise their body changes, but the person that's snapping the fingers doesn't feel any better? They could easily give up and think, well, here I look great in the mirror, but I'm just not any happier as a person. So to the degree that you can identify anybody who has a challenge at the level of their spiritual philosophy, you have the greatest likelihood of changing them at the mental, emotional, and physical level. So I would like to close this section by sharing what my definition of spirituality is. My definition of spirituality is taking responsibility for what you create moment to moment in your life. That means you don't blame someone else and you don't behave irrationally and accept or expect somebody else or something else or some other being to take care of your problems. That is to divert your own challenge. The spiritual being accepts responsibility for the fact that they themselves have a body, that they themselves have a life, and that they themselves are in relationship to other beings And to the degree that you know that you're here and that it's you snapping your fingers, you too must take responsibility for your own spiritual ideology.